Hello everyone, my name is Alex Hackett, and today I will be giving a little video talk, a little video chat on for my AP Bio project on radiation, ionizing radiation, and the specific effect radiation has, in biology speaking, on our cells or organism cells, the overall health of the organism, and also delving not only into how it affects the atomic structure of the atoms the atomic structure of the cells, as well as how it can alter DNA. So, ionizing radiation is 6 to 7 times the energy needed to break the chemical bonds between two carbon atoms. So it's very powerful. It can change a molecule's composition and structure very easily. Um, to illustrate just how little ionizing radiation is needed to be a lethal dose, at least for humans, a lethal dose of ionizing radiation has been calculated to be somewhere in the ballpark of the thermal energy released in a hot sip or a sip of hot coffee. Um, the difference being coffee's energy in that one sip is distributed in a non-ionizing heat, while radiation energy is very, very concentrated. So it's a different release of that energy. Now, DNA, the molecule that makes us who we are and makes any organism what it is, the molecule that codes our proteins and ultimately makes up our phenotype and passes on our traits to our offspring, is very, very crucial um, in its structure because any little change, any little mutation has the potential to make an enormous difference in that organism's life and the life of the organisms that follow it, even from a single base uh, addition, subtraction, mutation, deletion. And just to illustrate how crucial these little changes can be, we share about 96% of our DNA with chimpanzees, which is amazing because people often think that we are extremely different from chimpanzees, from our ancestors, when in reality 96% just means that 4% of our DNA is different. The rest of it's the same. So that 4% illustrates how little differences can make really an enormous difference overall. So where ionizing radiation plays into this, ionizing radiation at molecular level pushes electrons out of orbit. It's called a direct action when an electron strikes and disrupts a DNA molecule from another DNA molecule, and this ionization happens in a fraction of a second. Most damage from X-rays from indirect action radiation um, is when a free electron strikes a water molecule, and that water molecule is ionized, which is known as a free radical. That free radical reacts very strongly with DNA molecules and is very detrimental. Neurons bypass electrons and crash into the nucleus and knock out alpha particles from that atom, protons, and other large fragments of the nucleus. So you can see how, on a larger scale, while one atom being destroyed might not make that much of a difference, on a larger scale with a lethal dose of radiation, which really isn't that big, causes immense problems for whatever the organism is. Uh, Cell death can be caused by the damage to the atoms within hours, or damage from the atoms within hours or days. Um, and so that lethal dose of radiation that I was talking about earlier, while it might cause damage immediately, or it does start causing damage immediately, those effects aren't seen for a little while after. Um, and as it spreads throughout the body and affects many cells and eventually the entire organism. The cell death occurs in two different ways, or it can affect the organism in different ways. The cell might not be able to function correctly because of the lethal dose of radiation, but at the same time, cells also can die if they can function properly, but they can't reproduce. This is particularly dangerous in areas of the body where the cells are needed to be constantly reproduced um, for the organism to function correctly and live. Radiation might not kill the cell immediately, but it can still alter the DNA code with mutations, which is what I was touching on earlier. These effects are known as stochastic because they are random. They can create both cancer cells and make changes that are passed down through generations with the alteration of gametes. And cancer uh, occurs when the control of cell division is lost. So a mutation occurs, um, or a gene for a tumor suppressor gene is altered, and the cell cannot stop itself from reproducing. Um, Different areas of the body are also more sensitive to radiation-induced cancer than others. For instance, bone marrow is way more uh, sensitive than skin cells. And it's difficult to measure the effects of radiation on the human body. But studies have been conducted on certain groups of people, such as the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bomb survivors, um, because they were subjected to a very large dose. Everyone was in that bomb radius, but they were subjected to a very, very large doses of radiation. And so scientists have used that information to find much of what we have today regarding how radiation affects humans specifically and cells in general, the atomic level, at the atomic level of life, and how that affects the cells and the overall health of the organism. So this is my video on the effects of radiation on life, and I hope that's helpful.